The current situation in Taiwan has changed radically. Warships and mainland aircraft arrive in Taiwan on a combat-ready journey. Has been normalized. The People's Liberation Army's area of actual control continues to expand forward. This is tantamount to taking over the Taiwanese military, initially responsible for the airspace, during the administration of Ma Ying-jeou, because the Kuomintang government persisted for a long time and reached consensus. Continue to promote exchanges and social exchanges between the two sides of the strait. Army planes don't need it. Go to Taiwan to swear the national sovereignty of Taiwan. The two sides of the strait are also bounded by the central axis of the strait. Control the sea and the airspace under your responsibility. But this does not mean that the mainland does not have the strength to expand forward. After the party people came to power, refusal to recognize the 1992 consensus embodied the One China principle. Firmly adhered to the concept of independent Taiwan. Cross-strait relations deteriorate. Worse still, the Civil Police Party administration also invited Pelosi to usurp power, determined to be a pawn of the United States to use Taiwan to control China, and try to use the power of the United States to use the United States to plot drugs. The peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait has been seriously affected and damaged. Mainland warships and aircraft arrive in Taiwan for combat patrols. Swear that the country's power over Taiwan is inevitable. The so-called midline of the strait is also deleted directly. Air domination. It is also slowly moving towards the main island of Taiwan. Taiwan's military control is constantly being compressed. This trend escalated as the US-Taiwan alliance provocative and new progress. According to Taiwanese media, this month, many military aircraft of the People's Liberation Army crossed the so-called center line of the strait to the so-called submarine line 24 contiguous area of the. This is tantamount to having complete control over the island's air superiority. And the Taiwanese military will completely lose its air superiority. For continental military aircraft, to the so-called 24 nautical mile district of the island of Taiwan Liaosha, the Taiwanese government in the adjoining county spoke harshly. Any flying entity in HNA of the People's Liberation Army. After the warning is invalid, it will be cracked, some military experts pointed out. The People's Liberation Army's normalized military operations around the island of Taiwan. Let the last line of defense of Taiwan's army retreated again and again, and formed a new inherited reality, preliminary oath of national sovereignty over Taiwan. The effect of increasing pressure to prevent independent Taiwan and separatist forces. From the scale of the current Air Force's journey, from the point of view of the type of maneuvering aircraft, it is still in its infancy, and with the People's Liberation Army. Air Force's combat readiness journey to Taiwan to the so-called 24-mile line on the island of Taiwan. Adjacent to the 12 nautical mile line, which will become the norm, the flock size will also gradually increase. In addition, warships of the PLA Navy. Similar actions will also be taken in good faith, although mainland ships and planes pass through the so-called midline of the strait. But in the past more limited. It did not go directly into 24 or 12 nautical miles airspace. But now the so-called boundary between the straits has been erased. The next step is to clear the so-called 24 and 12 knot lines. Independent Taiwan separatist forces, activities and living spaces will gradually be compressed. Chu Guzheng, the head of Taiwan's defense ministry, was once threatened. As long as the PLA's sword crosses the line, such conduct would be identified as PLA conduct. The first strike against any countermeasures by the Taiwanese military. That's called self-defense. However, there is a certain process for converting a flat station. If the warning fails, immediately shoot down the passing aircraft. What is remarkable is that, as the Taiwanese military continues to install new anti-aircraft missiles, it is very likely. Take risks. Attacks on mainland drones flying over Taiwan. He has continued to conspire for drugs. Actually, why the Taiwanese government? Continually experimenting and clashing with the crux of the mainland's One China principle. Should be noticed, the mainland does not want to resolve Taiwan by military means. The mentality of the matter, and using the goodwill of the mainland to provoke and persecute. Not just arbitrarily buying US-made weapons and equipment, and also invited US special forces stationed in Taiwan to assist. Taiwan's military actively responds to the strategic needs of the United States. At the same time as the United States continues to show a high attitude to support Taiwan, the Taiwanese government only dared to speak harshly to the mainland when it fell and crossed the border. But unexpectedly, soon got slapped in the face. Military aircraft of the People's Liberation Army again crossed the so-called center line of the strait. And reached the 24 nautical mile line, and the Taiwanese army has nothing to do, explore the Sea of Taipei. 2 Russian warships were discovered in the waters east of the island of Taiwan. About 26 nautical miles, in addition to showing close surveillance, Taiwan's defense ministry dare not take any significant deterrence and warning action. There is a point of view. Russian ships appeared in the waters to the east even with a designated military presence in the area. It is also a deterrent force for the North Korean government. To know that after the outbreak of the conflict in Russia, to invite support from the United States, the DPP administration condemns Russia's exceptional military action. On the other hand, following in the footsteps of the US, Japan imposed sanctions on Russia. In the eyes of the Minzu Party government with a guilty conscience, the action of the Russian warship is not only intended as a deterrent force, it also demonstrates Russia's support for fighting drugs on the mainland and promoting reunification. Earlier, the Taiwanese government announced the trajectory of the Russian warship during the night, demanded close supervision and tried to appease and stabilize the morale of the army. But, activities and living space of Taiwan independent separatist forces is being compressed. This also means the day of complete unification of the two sides of the strait is coming.